Thank you, Tumi, and welcome back. Just to introduce Katie Kataposes, who's here representing SANEP, taking over from Moshwefe Monare. Our first speaker to kick off the debate, ladies and gentlemen, is Advocate Pantsy Tlakula, who I introduced earlier. She's served the past 10 years as a special rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Advocate Tlakula.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. Let me acknowledge the presence of the Minister and also thank the ANC for convening this discussion. I am so pleased that we are having this discussion, particularly because it has been a very long road for me as the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa. From 2010, as Dario has said, when I sponsored the resolution on decriminalization of defamation in Africa. And at that time, when I sponsored that resolution, it was even difficult to convince my colleagues, the fellow commissioners, of the need to decriminalize defamation. And we are not only talking about defamation, I think we should also be alive to other laws that still exist on the continent, like insult laws, publication of false news, and sedition. Because these laws are used in many parts of the continent to stifle free expression. And to say that I feel so pleased today because, you know, we all say charity begins at home. I have been going to many parts of the continent trying to campaign and advocate for decriminalization of these laws, and yet in my own country. These laws do exist, because when you go to other parts of the continent, people ask you, what about your own country? Why do you come here? Why don't you start at home? So at least, Minister, going forward, I will be able to say that our country has now committed to doing away with these laws. And I hear what Les is saying. But in the work that I do, the people who bear the brunt of these laws are not ordinary people. I've never come across a case where I've had to intervene in a case regarding an ordinary person who has been defamed. I write many letters of appeal. I intervene in most parts of the continent, from Cairo down. And who are the people who are persecuted or prosecuted using these laws? It's journalists, human rights defenders, and opposition politicians. I am yet to come across a case where an ordinary person has lodged a complaint with the police on criminal defamation. I'm also pleased that I see among us people that I work with, because we, as I've indicated, in 2012, in Tunis, we launched a continent-wide campaign to have these laws decriminalized. And I see people who are part of my campaign in this room. In fact, when we leave here today, we have a 2-day meeting to discuss how we're going to intensify the campaign to decriminalize campaign post the Konate decision. Because post-Konate, we have to ensure that, decriminalization process gains traction on our continent. And finally, to say that it's been a long, long road, again, since the adoption of the Table Mountain Declaration that also gave impetus, started this campaign. And to remind all of us, free expression activists, that next year marks the 25th anniversary of the Windhoek Declaration. And it will be good, Honorable Minister, if South Africa helps us to commemorate the adoption of that important document by decriminalizing defamation in this country. I'm hoping that in 2016, criminal defamation in South Africa will be a thing of the past. Thank you very much for giving me the
Thank you, Advocate Tlakula. Right, we're now open for questions, comments from the floor. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Your name and organization?
My name is Justine Limpetlaw, and I'm on the working group of the Decriminalisation of Expression campaign in Africa, and I'm also a board member of Media Monitoring Africa. And I just want to say to the Minister, in particular, it's a very emotional day for me to hear those wonderful remarks and to see the ANC once again, in my view, playing that liberation role for all of us and for media freedom that I have long associated. And I'm very grateful for this. And now I need to stop being emotional because I've got a couple more things to say. The one thing is that criminal defamation is currently trending as the #1 topic on Twitter. This on a day when our rugby team is playing its first World Cup match is extraordinary. So it's amazing what's happening in this small room. And then secondly, Minister in particular, I want to ask if the ANC government will please take up the issue of eradicating criminal defamation in all of the SADC countries, because journalists are really suffering in Southern Africa under these laws. We know they're a colonial throwback. They were meant deliberately passed to suppress African people and African voices. And we need your help. The region needs South Africa's help in getting rid of this. So please work with us at SADC to promote the eradication of criminal defamation for the whole region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justine. Are there any more comments, questions from the floor? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Timothy Maurice Webster. I would like to put on the table, I work with, I'm a thought leader and an author. I participate in media on a number of platforms from Metro FM to CNBC Africa. And one of the things I'm concerned about is the fallout after the eradication. I feel that the media often disrespects the ecological order of many sort of African cultures. And the impact of reputation and defamation is different in each society. And to defame someone from certain communities with certain cultural principles can have larger impacts than someone who comes from sort of a Greek personal agency society versus sort of a collectivist society. So while I agree and I understand principally from a democratic, from a legislative, from a democratic dynamic, the fallout from the life force principles from an ecological order perspective when a journalist attacks someone who comes from a collective society will be extraordinary. To brace yourself and put conditions in place to be able to absorb that fallout is something that must be put on the table.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Please, we've got a representative from SANEF here, Katie.
Thank you very much. I want to say that I think we need to strike a balance here. So while we most certainly welcome this conversation around criminal defamation leaving our law books, I think as journalists and as editors, we have a responsibility to report ethically at all times. It cannot be a free-for-all as we've heard earlier today, but it needs to be something that we really strike a very careful balance when reporting. We cannot think now that this is a go-ahead and it gives us the go-ahead just to go and say what we want, when we want. The basic fundamentals of journalism that guide us, the principles and the ethics need to remain very, very firmly in place.
Thank you, Katie. You want to say something, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess what I wanted to ask has been covered by what she just said, because I wanted to say perhaps in countries where decriminalization of defamation has been exercised, have we perhaps seen the quality of reporting going down, or has it stayed constantly? Perhaps those are things that need to be looked at, because as consumers of news, you want to see quality of news coming through to you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone that wants to put questions to our speakers? Dario, Les?
Dario, this question is more geared towards you and also perhaps to you, Les. By the way, my name is Ahmed Kaji. I'm an advocate at the Johannesburg Bar and a member of Advocates for Transformation. Many instances of defamation would also constitute the crime of crimen injuria. So where would you draw the line between the two, if you have to draw the line? Because I believe crimen injuria is defined as unlawfully, intentionally, and seriously impairing the dignity of another person, whether by words or by actions. So that would be my question to the two of you.
I think it's a very important question. The jurisprudence around crimen injuria tends to focus on personal insults and dignity invasions, as opposed to, should I stand up? Sorry, let me repeat that. The jurisprudence around crimen injuria focuses on personal insults and dignity invasions, as opposed to widespread publication, which is where you're in the realm of defamation. And that's why typically, as Advocate Tlakula said, the media and journalists and activists and unionists and campaigners, opposition parties, are the target of criminal defamation lawsuits or criminal defamation prosecutions, because it is a widespread publication thing. For crimen injuria, you're talking about, and for instance, there's a recent case at the Supreme Court of Appeal where the K word was used, and where the Supreme Court of Appeal gave a very resounding judgment as to why that is absolutely unacceptable in our democracy and deserves punishment under crimen injuria. So I think that the two topics are very distinguishable. It's true that there's an overlap at the level of theory, but I think once criminal defamation is off the law books, crimen injuria will really be confined to those cases where legitimately there are, racist statements, insults, harms to dignity on a personal level, and where there's an appropriate criminal law response to those situations. Liz, I'm not sure if you want to add to that.
Thank you. I would just say, in relation to Motsepe's case, where you've got a magistrate accused of racism in his professional capacity, he is being defamed. His reputation is what's being impaired. He's not merely being insulted by insulting language. It's not merely his dignity. It's a component of his dignity that means his entire profession. And in fact, the dignity of the office that he holds is being impaired. And in that situation, I think the criminal defamation has got an important different function, because reputation goes beyond mere dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Les and Dario. Advocate Sebeko.
Thank you. My name is Mkabela Sbego. I'm the advocate based in the Johannesburg Bar, also a member of the ANC Legal Research. I am slightly concerned that the debate has actually been very unidimensional and a bit idiosyncratic, in that it is a debate involving the powerful, the media, and perhaps purported high-ranking, government officials, who are both resourced and can actually go and dig deeper into their resources if and when their sort of space is invaded. Very little has been said. I would love to hear more on the side of SANEF to say the powerless, because I listened to Advocate Pantsy Tlakula saying these things are not reported. But the reality of the situation is that the media, being those people that are in a position to set the agenda and decide what's reported, turn a blind eye in instances where the weak and the powerless have their rights to dignity, not to be defamed, attacked. I would love to hear what serious attempt is going to be made to ensure that even the powerless are brought onto the agenda, as it were. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Sebeko. Katie, would you like to respond to that, or any other members from SANEF?
Yes, thank you. Would you like me to stand? Thank you for that. I think it's a very important point in terms of the powerless. I think as the South African National Editors Forum, we certainly do not prescribe to newsrooms in terms of who should and who shouldn't be covered, in terms of powerful or those in the know, or those who have very strong voices and very loud voices. Our mandate as journalists is to tell a story in South Africa, the unfolding story, be it on a political, social or economic level. And that often includes the powerless, as you describe them, sir. It often includes people who don't have a very loud voice. But we've seen many stories in the media of late, in fact, of those who don't historically have a very strong voice, but we are telling their stories. And I think what we should be doing as SANEF is encouraging our newsrooms, our reporters, our editors to keep telling the stories of South Africa, whether good or bad, by the way, because we hold a mirror up to our society and we need to reflect the goings on in our society. So I certainly don't think that something like criminal defamation will take the voice away from the powerless or the poor or the weak, as you describe them. I think we just need to be strong in terms of focusing on all those who have a story to tell within South Africa, be it good or bad, as I say.
Thank you, Katie. Is anyone else from SANEF that'd like to contribute, or civil society organizations, sir?
Hi, Wynand Goosen. I work in education and training, and I would just like to perhaps just one or two words in terms of whether it's decriminalized or not decriminalized. I think one needs to anchor the debate in terms of systems thinking, and simply maybe bring it back to what is the value based of our society. Because we're talking about what do we do when these type of events happen. But I would like to pose the question, what do we do to prevent these types of questions happening and these sort of situations occurring? And the answer lies in reintroducing the value base in our society. For example, I think that where we are right now in our country, our moral fiber is deteriorating, and I think that from young people's perspective, they have very little guidance, very little leadership in terms of what they should and shouldn't do. And I think we need to just bring it back in terms of how do we behave in relation to one another before we start thinking in terms of what the law should or shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman there.
Hi, my name is Nimrod. The question that I want to pose is directly linked to SANEF and Katie, to you in particular. Now that you've acknowledged that there has to be a balance act, what is SANEF's position insofar as the recourse for those who have been defamed?
Thank you. Before taking Katie's response, one more question.
Well, it's not actually a question, it's just a comment. Hassan Kaji, I'm a member of the ANC Legal Research Group. I don't want to promote ANC politics as an ANC member, but all I want to say is that there was a famous historian, Voltaire, that said, I may not agree with what you say, but I will fight to have you say it. And we all know who was responsible for liberating this country. In view of that, we must acknowledge, as the minister has rightly said, 21 years now, we are slowly maturing as a democracy. Our past was very dark, but now, if you want to have democracy go strong, you have to get people to believe that they must be allowed to speak without fear and without favor. And if you want to build intellectual capital in this country, you've got to encourage debate. And I think what we need in South Africa is to encourage our public to become one that is a comprehending public. Because once we have a comprehending public, we get good debate and we have a stronger democracy. And I think, like the minister said, this initiative will hold the ANC in good stead, will bring the media to realize that the ANC is serious about governance in this country, is serious about making South Africa a better place for all. And it's sad that the media sometimes chooses to be irresponsible, and sometimes the media chooses to be selective about not saying what good the ANC does. But I can tell you something, if the media comes to the party over here, a lot will change in this country, and we will lead the continent. And we already see that happening in so many ways. Thank you.
Katie, you want to respond?
Thank you. And Nimrod, I'd like to respond to you. I think as SANEF, if somebody has been defamed, we certainly encourage that person to go to go through the routes that are already available. In the broadcasting sphere, there's the BCCSA, the Broadcasting Complaints Commission. Many media houses have their own internal ombudsman. We certainly don't encourage people to let it go, but take it up with the editors concerned. If there is anybody within that organization who you think can hear you. And last case, if you feel that there is a really serious case, I think a court of law can also assist in that way. But we're certainly not saying that any instances where people feel that they've been defamed should be let go, but we're saying take it up with the institutions that are currently in place.
Thank you, Katie. Any other comments, questions? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Sue Valentine. I'm from the Committee to Protect Journalists, and I wanted to say, as a South African coordinating a program in an international organization like CPJ, I'm so delighted, Minister, that South Africa is taking the lead on the continent to actually redress the law. There are too many journalists, small journalists working for community radio stations in the DRC, journalists in Kenya, journalists in non-democratic states like the Gambia and in democratic states like Kenya, who have been prosecuted under criminal defamation laws in order to silence the media. And it is wonderful that South Africa can actually take a lead, and we can point to examples on the continent where Africans are taking the lead and saying that freedom is freedom, and no African should be a second-class citizen in terms of criminal defamation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue. There's a question from one of our callers, Sue, Katie, to SANEF, is that when the media makes a mistake in publishing something, it normally goes, when they publish something in a sensational way, it goes front page, but the correction comes on page 6 in a very small box at the bottom. So the caller would like you to respond to that.
Thank you to the caller for that question. I think we also need to change the narrative around that. I think historically, yes, we might have seen a big front page splash with an incorrect story and then a page 6 or 7, or if you're lucky, a page 12 retraction or apology. But I think we also need to be fair and acknowledge that the media of late has been very responsible in terms of its apologies and retractions. I think we will have seen in many of our newspapers little columns either on the front page, page 2 or page 3, and I do think we need to acknowledge that strides have been made in terms of taking responsibility and being accountable for those mistakes. It certainly isn't correct to have a big front page splash with an incorrect version and then to bury the apology somewhere on page 12. But I don't think that's happening anymore, and I do think we need to be fair to our media colleagues to say that far more work has been done in this regard. It also happens in the broadcast space, and retractions and corrections are also happening quite prominently in news bulletins in the broadcast space as well.
If I may just add to that briefly, and that is to say that if you look at the jurisprudence of the Press Council in the last certainly 5 years, the standard approach, if there's been a front page story that's inaccurate and defamatory, is to order a front page apology. So there have been very prominent front page apologies in the last few years where the media get it wrong and are ordered to apologize by the ombudsman. Of course, they may choose to apologize of their own accord, which is always a good thing if you get it wrong. The second point to make is a prominent and prompt apology mitigates any damages claimed substantially. So it's an incentive to the media where you get it wrong. And my advice always to my clients is if you've made a mistake, you mitigate harm by apologizing promptly, prominently, and of course, in any event, that is what the press ombudsman will order if it goes to that forum. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just take the comment here, sir, at the back.
My name is Kenneth. My name is Kenneth. I'm part of the Vinci Institute team. What I want to pose, a question that I want to pose to this community, but also particularly to the minister in terms of political direction and political guidance, so that when we make these policies, when we decriminalize or we criminalize, so that these policies, they remain consistent and they become sustainable. so that at one stage we don't see the trend that is now happening in the world where we are criminalizing, we are decriminalizing. Defamation is still going to sit with us. It is not going to change after this meeting. But though I applaud, the social responsibility that we are all demonstrating, but what are we going to do? If it gets worse in the next two months, if it gets worse in the next 5 years, what are we going to do about it? And we're not going to be tempted again to criminalize. I like what Aristotle is saying. He says that man is a political animal and is possessed of rights. And the comparison is clearly valid to the extent that the politician will continue to produce, will continue to operate a legal system. But what are we going to do? We are still going to have other social ills that are going to come. How are we going to react to them? But then my main question is that defamation is not going to disappear after this meeting. But how are we going to react to it? Because I don't want to see a future where in 5 years' time, then the minister comes back and says, we have decided to criminalize. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Shirley Lloyd, and I'm the alumni representative of the Da Vinci Institute. My question really is about the print media, radio, television, are some sorts of media, but social media, social networking is huge. And there's so much cyberbullying, which could possibly even be seen as huge defamation, leading in some cases even to young people maybe even taking their lives, committing suicide, etc. So whilst we can look at the broader media that's very visible, that we can see, how do we, and I'm taking what Les was saying, how do we look and protect people from this massive increase in the cyberbullying, in defamation, and in ruining of reputations? I think my suggestion, one of them, would be a very strong policy framework that would underpin that sort of thing. It could be seen as normal defamation. It could be seen as hate speech, which we would need to deal with. But to me, that is a significant problem that needs to be dealt with somewhere in the policy framework. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to give the Minister an opportunity to say something.
No, just a few words, just to thank all the panelists and those participants in this very important debate on decriminalizing defamation. Somebody asked whether we can be able to disseminate this very profound and progressive development in South Africa to the continent as a whole. My answer to that is that we're going forward as a continent. We cannot behave as if we're still in the era of Homo naledi. We are in 2015 now. We have Agenda 2063. We talk about a free trade area for Africa. We talk about regional economic integration, infrastructure development, all areas of good corporate governance. So in this area, I believe that the word is going to be spreading. And in fact, it is spreading. Last week only in Mozambique, the judge, when two prominent economists, Franco Banco and Mbanza, a journalist, who have been charged for libelous activities when they issued a Facebook in 2013 criticizing the government of President Gebuza. The judge ruled that that cannot be regarded as libelous. So already you can see that the winds of change are blowing on the African continent. So we have no hesitation as the ANC that we believe in our constitutional democracy, in the rule of law, in the freedom of speech, of expression, of association. So this consensus that we have reached here today of going to our courts, High Court, even to the highest court of the land, the Constitutional Court, I'm sure sooner or later the whole of Africa may be able to follow suit so that we build an Africa of our dreams, the Africa of Kwame Nkrumah,
who wanted the whole of the African continent to be totally liberated, not only physically, but also mentally. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Advocate Tlakula.
No, I just have a small point to make that Ghana decriminalized many years ago, and also Niger. And as we look at going forward, we can, look at Ghana and see what happened after they decriminalized the defamation. The skies did not fall. The media is free. So I'm simply saying that going forward, Minister, in trying to take this debate forward, we can look at the countries that have decriminalized and look at the media landscape and look at whether in those countries defamation increased or not. I just thought I should put this on the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments, sir?
Thank you. My name is Zunati. I'm actually an engineer, and maybe I shouldn't be here. I think for me, there are social, moral issues that need to be addressed. Whether you criminalize or don't, we won't resolve that. Also, I think when it comes to the powerless, if defamation happens between the defamer can also be powerless. So in other words, if you then say he has committed a crime, and the social consequences of them having a criminal record and what those consequences are. So I think we must find a balance and really look where there's a acute problem and address an acute problem. But I think to keep it in some form because the power of the powerless, which in most instances don't even know that they are committing a crime. They are not aware that by defaming someone they are committing a crime. Or the person who's being defamed does not understand that it's a crime for them to be defamed. As a result, this never sees neither the civil process nor the criminal process. So even if you do keep it that way or criminalize it, you would have to really educate the powerless. Because without that education, they don't know actually what's happening. So that's my point. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to a short commercial break and we'll start rounding up this debate. Thank you. This morning, and to hand over to Professor Benny Anderson to say a few words and to acknowledge certain parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to start by saying these events not only just happen, they happen because there are people, real people that believe in what we want to achieve here. So we in particular want to say thank you to Dina Pillay, a colleague from our business community who has sponsored the advertorial for purposes of this workshop. And this has been done in memory of Gavi Pillay, who you may know has been a well-known human rights lawyer during the 1970s, so we are particularly pleased for the support from that side. We also want to say thank you to our three presenters who took the time out of their hectic professional lives, Dario Milo, Les Morris, and Moshweshwe Munare, for bringing inputs into this debate. We really appreciate that. This is also made possible because of the support of the SABC in broadcasting this event, and both on radio, SAFM, as well as SAB News Channel 404. Then also we want to acknowledge the contributions and the support and, well, the contributions of the ANC Legal Group and their colleagues who've been here today, in particular Mr. Chris Schneider for the preparation and the work done so far. We also want to say thank you for the presence of the Honourable Minister Jeff Radebe for joining us here today, as well as the presence of Advocate Pantsy Tlakula. We really appreciate both of you taking the time to be with us. There's also appreciation from our side for the involvement of SANEF and their delegation under the leadership of Moshweshwe Munare. We are pleased to have joined hands with them in this process. There's also the civil society organizations that are present here today, and we hope that this will be a start of a dynamic debate, not just around criminalization and defamation, but for ongoing debates that we're anticipating for the near future. The members of public and the viewers out there, we also want to say thank you for you already joining us in the process. I see on the Twitter feeds that there's quite some activity happening there. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the role of Da Vinci in particular is we heard a lot about the powerless, and there was reference made to the unfortunate. And as an Institute of Higher Learning, we hope to assist in going forward in facilitating and opening up the debate. It's all good and well that we are the privileged, we are the power that are able to be here today and to share and to talk and to discuss. But our intent is to take this debate post today for the next 8 weeks to a broader forum of people representing broader civil society. And we are prepared and made a commitment to tell the story to a broader audience and to facilitate more awareness amongst other people outside this room around defamation and around criminalization. And we will post the 8 weeks from today. Da Vinci will present a minute that we will circulate to broader society and to policymakers to inform the process going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Benny Anderson. Give our panelists 30 seconds each to round up.
Thank you, Krish. I'd just like to say thank you to the Minister, Pantsy. Beg your pardon. Thank you, Krish. Thank you, Mr. Minister Pantsy Tlakula, for your contribution today, for your leadership, and to the audience. I appreciate your contributions today, and thank you for the opportunity of addressing you on this important topic.
I'd like to just say, as a media lawyer, I'm obviously very, very happy with the announcement today. It strikes the correct constitutional balance. As a citizen of this country, I want to say I'm proud of the ruling party of my country today. And it's a very, very good day for freedom of speech, for the right to know, and for our democracy. Thank you.
As SANEF, it's unfathomable for us to think that in 2015 journalists could face arrest under this Criminal Defamation Act. We therefore really welcome the discussion and the debate today and look forward to the day when criminal defamation will officially be declared unconstitutional and unlawful. And we certainly welcome any further discussion as we get to that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for everyone. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our listeners. And let's give ourselves a round of applause in this audience this morning. And as many speakers have said, Professor Benny Anderson and others, that this is just the beginning of a process. And we certainly want to take up the challenge or the recommendation by Minister Cadre and the ANC that we are going to work towards the eradication of criminal defamation in South Africa. Thank you very much and goodbye.